The renowned bakery, an iconic recipe and years of dedication, a silent betrayal, a bold theft, and a game of lies, a meticulous revenge, a clever plan, and a surprising outcome. Just when everything seemed lost, a new opportunity arises. Before you meet this gripping story, get ready for a plot full of unexpected twists. The intense aroma of espresso filled the air as Ethan Reynolds left the elegant cafe in the heart of Manhattan's financial district. His fingers slid across the screen of his latest model smartphone, responding to dozens of important emails. As CEO of one of the country's largest technology companies, every minute of his time was precious. Wearing an impeccably tailored Italian suit, he emanated the aura of power and sophistication he had cultivated over the years. A sharp, metallic sound cut through the air, making him look up from his phone. His newly acquired Mercedes-Benz AMG, a masterpiece of German engineering in gleaming silver, now sported a deep scratch on the driver's door. Ethan's heart raced, not out of concern for the car. Money had never been an issue for him, but from the irritation of having his perfectly planned day interrupted. That's when he saw her. A young woman holding an old-fashioned retro bicycle with a wicker basket on the front. Her grey eyes were wide with fright, and rebellious strands of brown hair escaped from a messy ponytail. She wore a denim jacket that had seen better days, faded tight jeans and worn sneakers that contrasted drastically with the refined atmosphere of the area. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," she began, the words tumbling out hastily. "The bicycle slipped when I tried to avoid a pothole. I can pay for the repair." Ethan watched as she nervously searched for something in her worn backpack, probably a pen to write down her information. Her fingers trembled slightly, and he noticed calluses on her hands, hands of someone who worked hard. "Are you okay?" The question left his lips before he could think, surprising even himself. Normally, in this situation, he would already be calling his lawyer. She stopped her frantic search and looked at him, clearly confused by the question. "Me? Yes, I'm fine, but your car—" "The car can be fixed," he shrugged, putting his phone in his jacket pocket. "You, on the other hand, couldn't be replaced if you'd been hurt." A hesitant smile appeared on her face, lighting up her features in a way that caught him off guard. "That's probably the kindest reaction anyone's ever had. After I damaged their property. I'm Ethan Reynolds," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Lily Morgan," she replied, shaking his hand with surprising firmness, "and I still think I should pay for the repair." "Do you work around here?" "At Flower and Heart Bakery, 2 blocks north," she vaguely pointed northward. "I'm a pastry chef." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Must be a rewarding job." "It is, even if the pay isn't the best," she admitted with disarming honesty. "But I'm not there for the money. There's something magical about creating something with your own hands and seeing people's smiles when they taste it for the first time." A gust of cold wind passed by them, and Ethan noticed Lily shiver in her thin jacket. Without overthinking, he did something he would never do under normal circumstances. "How about we grab a coffee? It's cold out here." Lily tilted her head, studying him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Are you asking me out?" "I'm offering a civilized way to resolve our little incident," he replied with a smile he rarely showed in business meetings, "and maybe discover why someone would choose to make pastries instead of pursuing a more lucrative career." To his surprise, she laughed. "All right, Mr. Reynolds, but let's go to that cafe over there." She pointed to a modest establishment across the street. "Not that fancy place you just left. I need to maintain my dignity and pay for my own drink." As they walked together, Ethan realized that for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about emails, meetings, or stock quotes. He was intrigued by this woman who had just scratched his luxury car and, instead of panicking, maintained a dignity and authenticity he rarely encountered in his social circle. The cafe was simple, with wooden tables without tablecloths and a menu handwritten on a blackboard. Lily ordered a cappuccino while he stuck with his usual espresso. The place had a welcoming aroma of freshly ground coffee and baked bread. "So," she began, gently blowing on her cappuccino, Why isn't the powerful Ethan Reynolds yelling at a pastry chef who just scratched his ridiculously expensive car? How? Do you know who I am? Please, she rolled her eyes. Your photo is always in business magazines. Reynolds Tech is practically an empire. But you didn't answer my question. Ethan took a sip of his coffee, thoughtful. Maybe I'm tired of people who only approach me because of my money or position. You didn't even try to take advantage of the situation. I'll take that as a compliment, she smiled, and for the first time, he noticed small freckles on her nose. But I still intend to pay for the scratch. How about a deal, he proposed, leaning over the table. Tomorrow I'll visit your bakery to try your famous pastries. If they're really as good as you say, we'll forget about the scratch. Lily narrowed her eyes, considering the proposal. Fine, but don't expect special treatment just because you're a billionaire. And you'll have to. Wait in line like everyone else. Deal, he replied, realizing he was genuinely looking forward to the next day. When they said goodbye, Ethan watched Lily pedaling her old bicycle down the busy street, skillfully weaving between luxury cars. There was something different about her, something that intrigued him deeply. Returning to his scratched car, he found himself smiling for no apparent reason. That night, for the first time in years, Ethan had difficulty concentrating on work. His thoughts kept returning to challenging grey eyes and a sincere smile over a cup of cappuccino. He didn't know it yet, but that scratch on his car would end up changing his life in ways he could never have imagined. The sun had barely risen when Ethan parked his freshly scratched car in front of Flower and Heart Bakery. The establishment, with its modest facade and worn sign, completely contrasted with the surrounding skyscrapers and glass buildings. A small line was already forming at the entrance, ordinary people starting their day with coffee and fresh bread. Ethan adjusted his expensive wristwatch, feeling strangely out of place in his Italian suit. For the first time in years, he wasn't the center of attention when entering an establishment. Nobody there seemed to care who he was or how much his fortune was worth. It was a new and surprisingly refreshing sensation. The aroma that hit him upon entering was intoxicating, a mixture of freshly ground coffee, bread coming out of the oven, and something sweet he couldn't identify. The interior of the bakery was cozy, with rustic wooden tables, plants hanging from the ceiling, and shelves filled with artisanal breads. His eyes scanned the place, seeking Lily's familiar face. She was behind the counter, focused on decorating a cake with surgical precision. Her hair was tucked into a hairnet, and a floral apron covered her simple clothes. There was something hypnotic about the way she worked, a passion evident in every movement. When it was finally his turn in line, Lily looked up and for a moment seemed genuinely surprised. "You actually came," she commented, a smile playing on her lips. "I always keep my promises," Ethan replied, feeling strangely satisfied at having surprised her. Lily leaned over the counter, studying him with curiosity. "So, Mr. Reynolds, what'll it be? We have cheese bread just out of the oven, almond croissants, or maybe you'd like to try our daily special." Ethan hesitated, realizing he usually had an assistant make these kinds of choices for him. "What do you recommend?" Lily's smile widened. She turned and picked up a small package, placing it on the counter. "I saved this especially for you. It's a dulce de leche millefeuille with a pinch of sea salt, but if you think you're going to eat for free, you're very mistaken. The fee for the scratch on your luxury car is to try this and tell me honestly what you think." Ethan couldn't contain a smile. "Seems fair." He took the pastry and headed to a table in the corner, observing the movement in the bakery. Hurried executives getting coffee to go, elderly people reading newspapers while savoring their bread, and young students laughing over steaming cups. It was a microcosm, so different from his usual world of meeting rooms and exclusive parties. Upon taking the first bite of the millefeuille, Ethan had to restrain himself from letting out a moan of pleasure. The layers were perfectly crispy, the dulce de leche melted in his mouth, and the touch of salt enhanced all the flavors. It was, without a doubt, the best dessert he had ever tasted. Lily appeared at his side, wiping her hands on her apron. "So, what's the verdict?" "I think you just earned your freedom for the scratch," he replied, unable to hide his delight. "This is extraordinary." Her face lit up at the compliment, and Ethan felt something strange in his chest, as if his heart had skipped a beat. "I'm glad you liked it," she said, sitting down across from him for a moment. "But I must confess I'm curious. What brings the all-powerful CEO of Reynolds Tech to a neighborhood bakery at 7 in the morning?" Ethan considered the question, surprising himself with his own honesty. "Maybe I needed a change of scenery, or maybe I wanted to understand why someone would choose to make pastries instead of pursuing fortune and fame." Lily tilted her head, her gray eyes penetrating. "And have you reached any conclusion?" "Not yet," he admitted, "but I'm beginning to see the appeal." At that moment, the doorbell rang and a group of executives entered, all in expensive suits and with serious expressions. One of them, upon seeing Ethan, stopped abruptly. "Reynolds, what are you doing here?" Ethan recognized the man. Mark Jenkins, CEO of a competing company and frequenter of the same social circles. "Having coffee, Jenkins," Ethan responded dryly. "It's what one usually does in a bakery." Mark cast a curious glance at Lily, who was still sitting at the table. "I didn't know you frequented places like this." The condescending tone didn't go unnoticed. Ethan felt a wave of irritation, but before he could respond, Lily stood up. "Mr. Jenkins, is it? I heard your company had a significant drop in stocks recently. Perhaps a little sugar might help sweeten your mood. I recommend the millefeuille," she said with a sweet smile, but her eyes sparkled with a veiled challenge. Mark was dumbfounded, clearly not expecting to be confronted by a simple pastry chef. Ethan had to make an effort not to laugh. I'll just get my coffee," Mark muttered, quickly walking away. When he was gone, Ethan looked at Lily with new admiration. That was impressive. She shrugged, but there was a gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. Sometimes a little sugar and a pinch of salt make all the difference, whether in pastries or in life. Ethan laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "You know, I think I'll need a few more days to really evaluate if your pastries are that good. Maybe I'll come back tomorrow." Lily raised an eyebrow. "Be careful, Mr. Reynolds. People might start talking if a billionaire begins to regularly frequent a simple bakery." "Let them talk," he replied, surprising himself with his own boldness. Some secrets are worth keeping. In the days that followed, Ethan found himself returning to the bakery every morning. Each visit brought a new discovery. The cinnamon bread that Lily made only on Wednesdays, the special coffee that old Mr. Tony prepared in the back, the stories of regular customers who now greeted him as if he had always been part of that world. But more than the pastries or coffee, it was Lily who intrigued him more and more. Her passion for what she did, her cutting honesty, and her unique view of the world were like a breath of fresh air in his meticulously controlled life. One morning, while savoring a croissant, Ethan noticed a group of teenagers entering the bakery, all wearing worn school uniforms. "They're from the local orphanage," Lily explained, noticing his curious look. "They come here every Friday. We always save some bread and pastries for them." Ethan watched as she handed out bags full of bread and smiled gently at each child. There was no condescension in her actions, only genuine kindness. "Why do you do this?" he asked when she returned. "Because everyone deserves a little sweetness in life," she replied simply. "Not everything boils down to profits and losses, Mr. Reynolds." Those words stayed with Ethan long after he had left the bakery. As he drove to the office in his luxury car, he found himself questioning, for the first time in years, if he was living life the right way. That night, sitting in his office atop a skyscraper with a view of the city he had helped shape, Ethan found himself not thinking about mergers or acquisitions, but about grey eyes and the aroma of fresh bread. And for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to dream of possibilities that went beyond spreadsheets and financial reports. Little did he know that his world was about to be turned upside down, and that the simple act of entering a neighborhood bakery would be the catalyst for a journey that would change not only his life, but that of many around him. The weeks passed, and Ethan's visits to Flower and Heart Bakery became part of his daily routine. What had begun as curiosity transformed into something deeper, something he still couldn't name, but that made him feel more alive than he had ever felt. On a particularly busy morning, Ethan arrived at the bakery to find Lily visibly stressed. Her cheeks were flushed and strands of hair escaped from her usual bun. "What happened?" he asked, concerned. Lily sighed, running a hand across her forehead. "The industrial oven broke down. We have a huge order for a charity event this afternoon, and I don't know how we'll manage." Without thinking twice, Ethan took off his jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his designer shirt. "How can I help?" Lily looked at him, surprised. "You? Help in the kitchen?" "Hey, I may not know how to make a millefeuille, but I can follow instructions," he replied with a challenging smile. For a moment, Lily seemed to hesitate, but the urgency of the situation spoke louder. "All right, but let me know if you burn." "Anything. I don't want to have to pay for a scorched Armani suit." The following hours were a whirlwind of activity. Ethan found himself mixing doughs, greasing pans, and, to his surprise, even decorating some cupcakes under Lily's patient guidance. The work was hard and very different from everything he was used to, but there was something incredibly satisfying about creating something with his own hands. "Not bad for a CEO," Lily commented, looking approvingly at a tray of cookies that Ethan had just taken out of the oven. He smiled, feeling a wave of pride that he normally only experienced when closing big deals. "I think I've found my secret calling," Lily laughed, a sound that Ethan discovered he loved to hear. "Don't get too excited. We still have a lot of work ahead." As they worked side by side, Ethan couldn't help but notice how natural they felt together, as if their movements were synchronized. There were moments when their hands brushed as they reached for the same utensil, sending sparks of electricity through his body. By late afternoon, exhausted but satisfied, they managed to finish the order on time. Lily turned to Ethan, a radiant smile on her flour-dusted face. "We couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice carrying sincere gratitude. Before Ethan could respond, the kitchen door opened abruptly. An elegant woman wearing an impeccable suit and high heels entered, her eyes scanning the environment with evident disapproval. "Ethan? What does this mean?" Ethan felt his stomach sink as he recognized the voice. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Barbara. Reynolds, matriarch of the family and an imposing figure in New York's social circles, looked at her son as if she didn't recognize him. Her eyes moved from Ethan, with his expensive shirt stained with chocolate, to Lily, who was still holding a spatula. "I came to see why my son has been missing and ignoring my calls," she replied coldly. "Now I understand why." Lily stepped forward, extending her hand. "Mrs. Reynolds, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Lily Morgan, the—" "Spare me the introductions, dear," Barbara interrupted her, without even looking at the extended hand. "Ethan, we need to talk in private." Ethan cast an apologetic look at Lily before following his mother out of the kitchen. They found a quiet corner of the bakery, away from the curious ears of customers. "What do you think you're doing?" Barbara hissed, her voice low but laden with disapproval. "You are the CEO of one of the largest technology companies in the country, not a baker." Ethan felt a wave of irritation grow inside him. "I'm helping a friend, Mom, and frankly, it's none of your business." Barbara narrowed her eyes. "None of my business? You're risking everything we've worked for. Your reputation, the family legacy. Maybe I want more from life than just reputation and legacy," Ethan retorted, surprised by his own boldness. His mother studied him for a long moment, her eyes softening slightly. "It's about that girl, isn't it? Ethan, dear, I know you might feel towards attracted, but think carefully. She doesn't belong in our world." Barbara's words hit Ethan like a punch to the stomach. He knew his mother was expressing the same prejudices he himself had not too long ago. But now, after getting to know Lily, after seeing the world through her eyes, everything seemed different. "Maybe I'm the one who doesn't belong in that world anymore, Mom," he replied calmly. Barbara seemed shocked by his words. "Don't be ridiculous. You were born for this. You have responsibilities, expectations." "And what if I don't want to meet those expectations anymore?" Ethan challenged. Before his mother could respond, Lily appeared carrying a small box. "Excuse me for interrupting," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Mrs. Reynolds, I know we haven't met, but I'd like you to take this." She extended the box. "These are some of our best pastries. Maybe they can sweeten the situation a bit." Barbara looked at the box as if it was something alien, but years of social etiquette prevented her from openly refusing. With a tense smile, she took the box. "Thank you," she said coldly. Turning to Ethan, she added, "This conversation isn't over. I expect to see you at the family dinner on Sunday." With that, she turned and left the bakery, leaving a tense silence behind. Ethan turned to Lily, seeing concern in her eyes. "I'm sorry about that," he murmured. Lily shook her head. "Don't apologize, but maybe your mother is right. Maybe I'm complicating your life." "No," Ethan said firmly, taking her hands in his. "You're not complicating anything. In fact, for the first time in a long time, things seem to make sense." The look they exchanged at that moment was loaded with unspoken emotions. Ethan knew he was at a crossroads. On one side, the world he had always known with its expectations and comforts. On the other, an unknown path, but one that promised something money couldn't buy: authenticity and perhaps true love. That night, as Ethan drove back to his penthouse apartment, his mind was in turmoil. His mother's words echoed in his ears, mixing with Lily's laughter and the aroma of fresh bread. He knew a decision would have to be made soon. What he didn't know was that this decision would end up affecting not just his life, but that of everyone around him, in ways he could never have imagined. Sunday dinner at the Reynolds mansion had always been a formal, almost ritualistic event. Ethan adjusted his tie, feeling strangely uncomfortable in his expensive suit, as if he were wearing a skin that no longer belonged to him. The dining table was a work of art in itself, with fine china, silver cutlery, and elaborate floral arrangements. Barbara Reynolds presided over the head of the table, her posture as impeccable as always. On the other side was Richard, Ethan's father, a man of few words, but whose penetrating gaze seemed to see through souls. "Ethan, dear," Barbara began, her voice soft but with a hint of steel, "we were worried. You've been so absent lately." Ethan took a sip of wine, buying time. "I've been busy, Mom. The company." "The company?" Richard interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "I've heard rumors that you've been spending more time in a certain bakery than in the office." Ethan's heart raced. Of course his father would know. Nothing escaped the Reynolds network of contacts. "It's true," he admitted, deciding that honesty was the best path. "I've been frequenting Flower and Heart. It's refreshing." Barbara set down her cutlery, her eyes fixed on her son. "Ethan, I understand you might be going through a phase, but you have responsibilities. The company, our social position. And what if I don't want those responsibilities anymore?" Ethan blurted out, surprising even himself with the boldness of the question. A heavy silence fell over the room. Richard leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about, son?" Ethan took a deep breath, feeling like he was on the edge of a precipice. "I'm talking about happiness, about purpose. In the last few months, I've met people who have much less than we do, but seem much more satisfied with their lives." Barbara let out a dry laugh. "Oh, Ethan, don't tell me that. Baker Girl has put these ideas in your head." "Her name is Lily," Ethan replied, a hint of irritation in his voice. "And no, she hasn't put anything in my head. She's just shown me that there's a world beyond contracts and acquisitions." Richard cleared his throat, his tone calculatedly neutral. "Son, I understand you might be fascinated by this new world, but don't forget who you are, what we've built." "And what if I want to build something different?" Ethan challenged. Barbara stood up abruptly, her chair scraping on the marble floor. "Enough, Ethan, can't you see what's happening? That woman is manipulating you, pulling you away from everything that matters." Ethan felt a wave of anger rise in his chest. "You don't know her, Mom. Lily is the most authentic and selfless person I've ever met." "Selfless?" Barbara scoffed. "They all seem selfless at the beginning, dear, but in the end, it's always about money and status." "Not with her," Ethan insisted, standing up as well. "Lily didn't even know who I was when we met. She—" "Enough!" Richard's thundering voice cut through the air. He rarely raised his voice, and the sound made both Ethan and Barbara freeze. "Ethan, you have 1 week. 1 week to get your head straight and come to your senses. Otherwise, we'll have to take drastic measures." Ethan looked at his father, incredulous. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm protecting this family's legacy," Richard replied coldly. "The choice is yours." With a heavy heart and a turbulent mind, Ethan left the mansion, his parents' words echoing in his ears. He drove aimlessly through the city until he found himself unconsciously in front of Flower and Heart. The bakery was closed at that hour, but a soft light came from the kitchen in the back. Without thinking too much, Ethan knocked on the door. Moments. Later, Lily appeared wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair tied in a messy bun. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw him. "Ethan, what are you doing here so late?" He hesitated, suddenly aware of how he must look. A man in an expensive suit standing at the door of a closed bakery in the middle of the night. I didn't know where else to go," he admitted. Lily's face softened with concern. She opened the door wider. "Come in, I'll make some coffee." In the cozy kitchen, with the aroma of yeast and sugar still lingering in the air, Ethan slumped into a chair. Lily placed a steaming cup in front of him and sat beside him, patiently waiting for him to speak. "My parents," he began, his voice choked. "They don't understand. They think you're manipulating me, pulling me away from my duty." Lily sighed, her eyes full of understanding. "Ethan, maybe they're right. Not about the manipulation, of course, but look, at you. You're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and me? I'm just a pastry chef. Our worlds are so different." "No," Ethan interrupted, taking her hands. "Don't say that. These last months, here with you, have been the happiest and most meaningful of my life." Lily's eyes shone with unshed tears. "But at what cost, Ethan? Would you really be willing to give up everything? Your family, your career?" Ethan felt his heart tighten. The question hung in the air, heavy and inevitable. Would he really be ready to leave everything behind? At that moment, looking into Lily's eyes, seeing the concern and affection reflected in them, Ethan realized he already knew the answer. But before he could verbalize it, his phone vibrated. It was a message from his assistant. An unexpected crisis at the company required his immediate presence. I have to go," he said reluctantly. Lily nodded, a sad smile on her lips. "Go. Your world is calling." As Ethan headed to the office, his mind was in conflict. On one side, the life he had always known, with its responsibilities and expectations. On the other, the promise of something new, authentic, and potentially transformative. He knew a decision needed to be made, and that decision would affect not only him, but everyone around him. The weight of this choice accompanied him as he rode up to the penthouse of the skyscraper that housed the headquarters of Reynolds Tech, ready to face yet another corporate crisis, but with his heart divided between two worlds that seemed increasingly irreconcilable. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Ethan. The crisis at the company demanded his constant attention, forcing him to dive back into the corporate world that, until recently, defined his entire existence. Long meetings, endless phone calls, and crucial decisions occupied every minute of his day. However, even amid the chaos of numbers and strategies, his mind constantly wandered to a small bakery and the warm smile of a certain pastry chef. On tea, a particularly stressful afternoon, after a tense meeting with the board of directors, Ethan found himself standing in front of the window of his penthouse office. Down below, the city pulsed, millions of lives following their courses, oblivious to the drama unfolding at the top of that skyscraper. "Mr. Reynolds?" The voice of his assistant, Sarah, brought him back to reality. "Mr. Andrade from the Miami branch is on the line. He insists it's urgent." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Tell him I'll call back in 5 minutes." Sarah hesitated, something unusual for her. "Sir, if I may, are you all right? You seem distant lately." For a moment, Ethan considered dismissing her with a standard response, but something in the genuine concern in her eyes made him pause. "Sarah, have you ever wondered if you're on the right path? If all this," he gestured to the luxurious office, is really worth it? The assistant blinked, surprised by her boss's sudden vulnerability. Well, sir, I think we all question our choices from time to time, but you've built something incredible here. Yes, but at what cost? Ethan murmured, more to himself than to her. That night, after hours of solving problems and putting out metaphorical fires, Ethan found himself driving aimlessly through the city. Without realizing it, he ended up stopping in front of Flower and Heart. The bakery was closed, but a faint light came from the back. Gathering courage, he knocked on the door. Moments later, Lily appeared, flour on her face and surprise in her eyes. Ethan, what are you doing here so late? I needed to see you, he admitted, feeling vulnerable in a way he had never experienced before. Lily studied him for a moment before opening the door wider. Come in. I'm working on a new recipe. In the cozy kitchen, the aroma of cinnamon and apple filled the air. Lily returned to the counter where a dough was half prepared. Want to help? She offered with a small smile. Ethan took off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, grateful for the distraction. As they worked side by side, kneading and shaping the dough, a comfortable silence settled between them. How are things at the company? Lily finally asked, her voice soft. Ethan sighed. Complicated. There's a crisis we're trying to resolve. Mergers, acquisitions, numbers. Sometimes it feels like I'm losing touch with what really matters. Lily stopped what she was doing and turned to him. And what really matters to you, Ethan? The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Ethan looked at his hands covered in flour, so different from the impeccable hands that shook those of CEOs and politicians. Honesty, he began, surprised by his own response. Real connection, doing something that has a tangible impact on people's lives. When I see the faces of the children who come here trying your pastries, there's a joy there that I don't see in meeting rooms. Lily smiled softly. But you do impact lives, Ethan. Your company generates jobs, develops technologies. Yes, but at what cost? He interrupted. How many small businesses were swallowed up in the process? How many lives were displaced in the name of progress? A thoughtful silence fell over them. Lily gently placed a hand on Ethan's arm. You're in a unique position, you know. You have the power to make real changes, to balance progress with compassion. Ethan stared at her, feeling a wave of emotion wash over him. How do you do that? Do what? See the best in everything. In everyone. Lily laughed softly. Years of practice, and maybe a little too much sugar in the blood. At that moment, looking at Lily, covered in flour and with that radiant smile, Ethan felt something click inside him. It was as if, for the first time, he could clearly see the path ahead. Lily, he began, his heart racing. But before he could continue, his phone vibrated insistently. It was Sarah. Another crisis at the company required his immediate attention. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. When he opened them again, he saw understanding in Lily's eyes. Go, she said softly. Your world needs you. He hesitated, torn between duty and desire. And you? Lily smiled, a touch of sadness in her eyes. I'll be here doing what I do best, baking dreams and hopes. With a heavy heart, Ethan said goodbye, promising to return. As he drove back to the office, his mind was in turmoil. He knew he was reaching a point of no return. A decision would have to be made, and soon. On one side, the empire he had built, his family's expectations, the security of everything he knew. On the other, the promise of a simpler, more authentic life, alongside someone who saw him for who he really was, not for what he possessed. As he entered the elevator of the Reynolds Tech skyscraper, Ethan knew the coming days would be decisive, not just for his career, but for the future he and Lily dreamed of building together. And as the doors closed, taking him back to his world of glass and steel, he couldn't help but wonder, what would be the true cost of his decision? The days turned into weeks, and Ethan found himself in a constant battle between two worlds. During the day, he navigated the turbulent waters of the corporate world, making decisions that affected thousands of lives. At night, he took refuge, in the welcoming simplicity of Flower and Heart, where the aroma of fresh bread and Lily's warm smile made him forget, even momentarily, the weight of his responsibilities. On a particularly busy afternoon, Ethan was in his office reviewing documents for an important merger, when Sarah entered looking concerned. "Mr. Reynolds, there's something you need to see," she said, turning on the TV on the wall. Ethan's heart sank as he saw the headline: Reynolds Tech CEO frequently seen at neighborhood bakery. Secret romance or midlife crisis? The images showed Ethan entering and leaving Flower and Heart, some of them captured late at night. The reporter speculated about why one of the richest men in the country was spending so much time at such a modest establishment. "This is a nightmare," Ethan murmured, running a hand over his face. Sarah hesitated before speaking. "Sir, perhaps it's time to consider making an official statement. The shareholders are getting nervous." Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. It was Richard, his father. "Son, I imagine you've already seen the news." Richard's voice sounded tense. "We need to resolve this, now." Ethan felt a wave of anger and frustration. "There's nothing to resolve, Dad. My personal life is nobody's business." "Your personal life affects the company, Ethan," Richard retorted. "The shareholders are worried. There are rumors that you're unstable, that you're not focused. We need to act quickly." "And what do you suggest?" Ethan asked, dreading the answer. "A press conference. We'll explain that you were doing volunteer work, something about corporate social responsibility, and then you'll distance yourself from that bakery." Ethan felt his blood boil. "I won't lie, Dad, and I definitely won't distance myself from Lily." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Richard spoke again, his voice was dangerously calm. "Ethan, you have 24 hours to resolve this, or I'll take drastic measures." The call ended, leaving Ethan with a weight in his chest. He knew his father didn't make empty threats. That night, Ethan went straight to Flower and Heart. He found Lily in the kitchen, working on a new batch of bread. "I saw the news," she said softly, without looking at him. Ethan approached, gently, touching her arm. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I never meant to bring this chaos into your life." She finally turned, her eyes full of concern. "Ethan, maybe we should take a break for the sake of your career, your family." "No," he interrupted firmly. "I won't let them decide my life for me. Not anymore." Lily studied him for a long moment. "What do you want, Ethan, really?" The question hung in the air, loaded with meaning. Ethan looked around the cozy kitchen, at the shelves full of ingredients, at the oven where so many dreams were baked daily. Then he looked at Lily, with flour on her face and determination in her eyes. At that moment, everything became clear. "I want this," he said softly. "I want a life with purpose, with real impact. I want to wake up every day knowing I'm making a difference, not just accumulating wealth. And I want you, Lily. You've shown me a world I didn't even know existed, and I don't want to lose it." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, are you sure? Are you willing to give up everything?" He took her hands in his. "I'm not giving up. I'm gaining something much more valuable." At that moment, surrounded by the aroma of fresh bread and the promise of a new beginning, they kissed. It was a sweet kiss full of hope and possibilities, but the happiness was interrupted by the shrill sound of Ethan's phone. It was Sarah again. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's an emergency. The board has called an extraordinary meeting for tomorrow morning. They're talking about voting for your removal from the presidency." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Ethan looked at Lily, seeing the fear and concern in her eyes. "What are we going to do?" she asked softly. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision he was about to make. "We're going to face this together. It's time to show the world that there's more to life than balance sheets and profits." As they embraced, seeking comfort in each other, Ethan knew that the real battle was just beginning. The next day would be decisive, not just for his career, but for the future he and Lily dreamed of building together. Outside, the city continued its frantic pace, oblivious to the drama unfolding inside that small bakery. But for Ethan and Lily, the entire world had been reduced to that moment, that silent promise to face together whatever fate had in store for them. Morning arrived with a palpable tension in the air. Ethan adjusted his tie, looking at himself in the mirror of his penthouse apartment. The man staring back seemed different, more determined, more alive, despite the dark circles that betrayed a night of poor sleep. "You don't have to do this," Lily said softly, approaching from behind him. She had spent the night there, the two of them planning and discussing what was to come. Ethan turned, taking her hands in his. "Yes, I do, not just for us, but for everyone who works at the company. It's time to show that there's a different way of doing business." Lily kissed him softly. "I'll be waiting for you no matter what happens." The journey to Reynolds Tech headquarters was surreal. The streets of New York, normally a chaos of cars and people, seemed strangely silent to Ethan. Or perhaps it was just the weight of the moment, amplifying everything around him. Upon arriving at the building, he was greeted by a crowd of reporters and photographers. Flashes fired from all sides, voices overlapped asking questions he couldn't or didn't want to answer at that moment. In the elevator, on the way to the meeting room, Sarah reached him, looking concerned. "Mr. Reynolds, the board is already assembled. Your father, he seems determined." Ethan nodded, silently thanking his assistant for her loyalty. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything." The doors of the meeting room opened, revealing serious faces around the large mahogany table. Richard Reynolds was at the head, his face a mask of disapproval. At his side, Barbara, Ethan's mother, seemed torn between concern and disappointment. "Ethan," Richard began, his voice cold as ice, "the board has met to discuss your future at the company. Your recent distractions have caused concern among shareholders." Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all eyes on him. It was now or never. "Before we make any decisions," he said, his voice firm, "I'd like to make a proposal to the board." Murmurs ran through the room. Richard raised an eyebrow but gestured for Ethan to continue. "In recent months, I've had the opportunity to see the world from a different perspective," Ethan began, walking slowly around the table. "I've seen how our decisions here affect the lives of ordinary people out there, and I realize that we have a greater responsibility than just generating profits for shareholders." He paused, noting that he had everyone's attention. "I propose a restructuring of Reynolds Tech, one that puts social impact at the center of our operations. Imagine a technology company that not only innovates, but also actively cares about the well-being of its employees and the communities where it operates." Ethan then detailed his plan: partnerships with small local businesses, training programs for young people from underprivileged communities, investments in sustainable technologies. Each point of his proposal was a bridge between the corporate world he knew so well and the values he had learned from Lily. As he spoke, he noticed a subtle change in the room. Some board members began to lean forward, interested. Others exchanged thoughtful looks. "I know it seems risky," Ethan continued, "but I believe this is the future of business. An approach that balances profit and purpose, and I'm willing to lead this transformation if the board gives me a chance." When he finished, a heavy silence fell over the room. It was Richard who broke it. "This is madness, Ethan," he said, but his voice didn't carry the harshness of before. There was a note of curiosity. "The shareholders will never accept it." "Actually," a female voice spoke up, "I find the proposal fascinating." Everyone turned to Mariana Coelho, one of the youngest and most influential members of the board. "Recent research shows that companies with strong social responsibility perform better in the long run. This could position us as leaders in a new era of business." Other board members began to speak up, some in favor, others against. The debate heated up, with arguments being thrown from all sides. Ethan watched, his heart racing, knowing that his future and the future of his vision was being decided there. After what seemed like hours, Richard raised his hand, silencing everyone. "It's clear that this is a decision that cannot be made." "Hastily," he said, his tone measured, "I propose that we give Ethan 6 months. 6 months to implement a pilot project of his vision. At the end of that period, we'll reassess based on the results." Murmurs of agreement ran through the room. One by one, the board members voted. When the last vote was counted, Ethan could hardly believe it. he had his chance. Leaving the meeting. Room, exhausted but relieved, Ethan was surprised by a hug from his mother. "I'm proud of you," Barbara whispered. "Today you reminded me why we fell in love with this business in the first place." With tears in his eyes, Ethan hugged his mother back, feeling as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. But the battle was far from over. He had 6 months to prove that his vision wasn't just a dream, but a viable path for the future, and he knew exactly where to start. Picking up his phone, he typed a message to Lily. "We got a chance. I need your help to make this a reality." As he waited for the response, Ethan looked out the office window at the city stretching below. For the first time in a long time, he didn't just see buildings and streets, but infinite possibilities. A new chapter was about to begin, and he could hardly wait to write it alongside Lily. The days following the board meeting were a whirlwind of activities. Ethan, energized by the opportunity to prove his vision, dove headfirst into the work. Reynolds Tech was about to embark on a journey of transformation, and he was determined to lead the way. One afternoon, while reviewing some documents in his office, Ethan heard a soft knock at the door. It was Lily, carrying a basket covered by a checkered cloth. "I thought you might need a snack," she said with a warm smile. Ethan stood, welcoming her with a soft kiss. "So you're an angel, you know that?" As Lily unpacked the basket, revealing fresh bread, cheeses, and fruits, Ethan couldn't help but admire her. She seemed perfectly at ease there, amid the expensive furniture and the panoramic view of the city. "How are things at the bakery?" he asked, taking a piece of bread. Lily sighed, a mix of exhaustion and excitement in her voice. "Busy. Since the news about us leaked, we've had an increase in visits. Some people come out of curiosity, but many end up coming back for the products." Ethan smiled, proud. "See? Your talent speaks for itself." "Speaking of talent," Lily began, hesitant, "I've been thinking about that idea of yours, about partnerships with small local businesses." "Yes?" Ethan leaned in, interested. "Well, I know several small business owners in the neighborhood, bakeries, pastry shops, cafes. They all have incredible stories and wonderful products, but many struggle to stay in the market, especially with competition from big chains." Ethan nodded, beginning to see where she was going. "What if," Lily continued, her eyes shining with enthusiasm, "Reynolds Tech developed a platform to connect these small businesses to consumers, something that would highlight their stories, their unique products?" Ethan felt a wave of excitement course through his body. "Lily, that's brilliant. A digital platform that not only connects but also tells the story behind each product. We could start with artisanal foods and expand to other sectors." The two spent the following hours outlining the idea, sketching concepts on a whiteboard, and discussing possibilities. It was as if their two passions, Ethan's technology and Lily's love for the local community, were merging into something greater. In the days that followed, Ethan assembled a team dedicated to the project. Programmers, designers, and marketing specialists worked tirelessly to bring the vision to life. Lily, in turn, became the bridge between Reynolds Tech and the local community, organizing meetings with small business owners and collecting their stories. One afternoon, while visiting a small family-run cafe that would be one of the first to integrate the platform, Ethan observed Lily interacting with the owners. She had a natural gift for making people feel at ease, for extracting the stories behind each business. "My grandmother started this cafe 50 years ago," the owner, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Cleo, told Lily. "She came to America with nothing, but with a coffee recipe she brought from her homeland. That aroma. It's the story of our family." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. These were the types of stories he wanted to highlight, the human connections behind businesses that were often forgotten in the corporate world. As the project progressed, Ethan found himself dividing his time between the Reynolds Tech office and the streets of the city, meeting people and hearing their stories. It was a job different from anything he had ever done, but incredibly rewarding. One night, as he and Lily walked hand in hand through the neighborhood after a long day of work, Ethan stopped abruptly. "What is it?" Lily asked, concerned. Ethan smiled, looking around. The lights of the shops shone softly. Couples strolled, Children ran on the sidewalks. It was a common scene, but for him, it now had a profound meaning. "I realize something," he said softly. "All my life, I thought success meant numbers on a spreadsheet, stocks on the rise. But this is real success. People living their lives, fulfilling their dreams, building communities." Lily squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with emotion. "And now you're helping to strengthen these communities, Ethan. You're making a difference in a way you never imagined." At that moment, under the soft lights of the city, Ethan pulled Lily in for a passionate kiss. It was a kiss of gratitude, of love, of promise for the future. When they separated, both a little breathless, Ethan pressed his forehead to hers. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" Lily asked, curious. "For showing me a world beyond walls of glass and steel, for reminding me of what really matters." Lily smiled, that smile that had captured Ethan's heart from the first day. "We're a team now. We're building something together." As they walked back home, hand in hand and hearts full of hope, Ethan knew he was on the right path. The project was still in its early stages, and there would be many challenges ahead. But with Lily by his side and a clear vision of what he wanted to achieve, he felt ready to face any obstacle. Reynolds Tech was transforming, and with it the lives of countless people. And at the center of it all were Ethan and Lily, two worlds that met by chance and were now creating something extraordinary together. As the months passed, Ethan and Lily's project, affectionately nicknamed Digital Roots, began to take shape. The platform, which connected small local businesses to consumers eager for authentic products and real stories, was about to be launched. On a sunny Saturday morning, Flower and Heart was busier than ever. Ethan, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, a look quite different from his usual expensive suits, was helping Lily organize a small fair for local producers in the space in front of the bakery. "Who would have thought," Lily joked as she adjusted a tablecloth over one of the tables, the big CEO carrying boxes and setting up booths. Ethan smiled, planting a quick kiss on her cheek, and loving every minute of it. The fair was a preview of what the Digital Roots platform would represent. Small cheese producers, artisanal wines, chocolates, and a variety of other products were present, each with a unique story to tell. As the first visitors began to arrive, Ethan noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Sarah, his assistant, was approaching timidly. "Mr. Reynolds," she greeted, looking a bit out of place outside the corporate environment. "Sarah," Ethan smiled warmly, "good to see you here, and please call me Ethan." Lily joined them, extending her hand to Sarah. "So you're the famous Sarah. Ethan speaks very highly of you." The two women began to chat animatedly, and Ethan stepped away to greet other visitors. From a distance, he observed how Lily introduced Sarah to the various producers, seeing his assistant relax and genuinely engage with the stories she heard. The morning progressed, and the fair became an absolute success. Neighborhood residents, curious people attracted by the media, and even some Reynolds Tech executives showed up to see what it was all about. At the height of the event, Ethan climbed onto a small improvised stage. The buzz of the crowd diminished as he began to speak. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice laden with emotion. "A few months ago, I didn't know any of these wonderful people who are here today. I didn't know the stories behind these incredible products. I lived in a world of numbers, charts, and endless meetings." He paused, his eyes finding Lily's in the crowd. "But then, by a stroke of fate, or perhaps by a providential scratch on my car, I met someone who showed me that there's much more to life and business than just profits. Lily taught me about community, about passion for what we do, about the real impact we can have on people's lives." Ethan then briefly explained about the Digital Roots platform, how it would connect consumers to local producers, not just facilitating purchases, but also sharing the stories behind each product. "This is just the beginning," he concluded. "Together, we're building bridges between the corporate world and local communities. We're showing that it's possible to do business in a way that benefits everyone." When he finished, the crowd erupted in applause. Lily ran to hug him, tears of joy in her eyes. But not everything was roses. As Ethan descended from the stage, he noticed his father, Richard, standing at the edge of the crowd, his face a mask of studied neutrality. "Dad," Ethan greeted him, tense. "I didn't expect to see you here." Richard looked around, observing the fair and the excited people. "Impressive," he said finally. "Different from anything we've ever done, but impressive." Ethan felt a mix of pride and apprehension. "And what do you think?" Richard hesitated for a moment. "It's risky, Ethan. Very different from our traditional business model. But," he paused, a small smile forming on his lips, "it's also innovative. And maybe it's exactly what we need." Those words meant more to Ethan than his father could imagine. It was the closest to approval he could hope for at this moment. As the afternoon progressed, Ethan found himself reflecting on the journey of the past few months, from a CEO focused only on numbers to someone deeply involved with the community. It was a transformation he never would have imagined, but that now he couldn't imagine any other way. Later, when the fair began to disperse, Ethan found Lily sitting on the steps at the entrance of the bakery watching the sunset. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting beside her. Lily smiled, leaning against him. "About how funny life is. A few months ago, I was just a pastry chef trying to keep my small bakery running. Now I'm involved in a project that could change the lives of so many people." Ethan hugged her, feeling the comforting warmth of her body. "You changed my life, you know. You showed me a world I didn't even know existed." "And you," Lily replied, looking into his eyes, "are using your power and influence to make a real difference. I'm so proud of you, Ethan." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ethan and Lily remained there, embraced, contemplating the future they were building together. It was a future full of challenges, certainly, but also brimming with possibilities and hope. The Digital Roots project was just beginning, but it was already causing waves of change, not just at Reynolds Tech, but throughout the community. And at the center of it all were Ethan and Lily, two worlds that collided and in the process created something truly extraordinary. The months following the launch of Digital Roots were an emotional and challenging roller coaster for Ethan and Lily. The platform was quickly gaining traction, attracting attention not just from local consumers, but also from specialized media and even investors interested in replicating the model in other cities. On a Wednesday morning, Ethan arrived at the office to find Sarah waiting for him with an anxious expression. "Good morning, Sarah. What happened?" he asked, noticing the stack of papers in her hands. "Mr. Reynolds." "Ethan," she corrected herself, still getting used to the informality he now encouraged. "We have a problem with some of our largest shareholders. They're concerned about the direction of the company and the momentary drop in profits due to investments in Digital Roots." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He knew this moment would eventually come. The transformation Reynolds Tech was undergoing wouldn't please everyone, especially those more focused on immediate financial returns. "Schedule a meeting with the board for tomorrow," he instructed. "It's time we show them the true potential of what we're building." As Sarah left to make the arrangements, Ethan found himself reflecting on how his life had changed. Just a few months ago, news like this would have left him in a panic, concerned only with numbers and market perception. Now, although he still felt the weight of responsibility, there was an inner certainty that they were on the right path. Deciding he needed a moment to reorganize his thoughts, Ethan left the office and drove to Flower and Heart. The familiar aroma of fresh bread calmed him as soon as he entered. Lily was behind the counter, teaching a new confectionery technique to a group of young apprentices, part of a training program they had initiated in partnership with a local NGO. Upon seeing him, she smiled, but her smile faded upon noticing the concern in his eyes. Excusing herself to the apprentices, she approached. "What happened?" she asked, guiding him to a table in the corner. Ethan explained the situation with the shareholders, feeling the weight of the challenges they faced. Lily listened attentively, holding his hand across the table. "You know," she began when he finished, "when I opened this bakery, many people told me I was crazy, that it was a business doomed to failure in a market dominated by big chains. But I believed in the power of human connections, in the quality of artisanal products." She paused, looking around the busy bakery. And look at us now. We're not just a bakery, we're a community meeting point. People come here not just for the bread, but for the stories, for the friendships. Ethan felt a wave of admiration for her. You're right. What we're doing with Digital Roots is exactly that, but on a larger scale. We're creating connections, strengthening communities. Lily smiled, squeezing his hand. Then show that to them. Not with charts and numbers, but with real stories. Take them to meet Mrs. Cleo from the cafe, or Mr. Joe from the artisanal cheese shop. Let them see the real impact of what we're doing. The idea lit a spark in Ethan. He stood up, energized. Lily, you're brilliant. That's exactly what I'll do. Before leaving, he leaned down to kiss her. What would I do without you? Probably still be stuck in endless meetings, talking about mergers and acquisitions, she joked. The next day, instead of convening the board for a traditional meeting, in the conference room, Ethan took them on a tour of the city. They visited small businesses that were part of the Digital Roots platform, heard stories from entrepreneurs whose lives had been transformed by the initiative. At each stop, Ethan not only showed the numbers, which, although modest at the beginning, presented consistent growth, but also highlighted the social and community impact of the project. The last stop was at Flower and Heart. There, Lily had organized a small reception with products from various platform partners. As the board members tasted artisanal cheeses, local wines, and of course, Lily's delicious bread and pastries, Ethan made his final speech. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice laden with passion. What we're building here isn't just a business, it's an ecosystem of shared prosperity. We're strengthening communities, preserving traditions, and at the same time innovating in how we connect producers and consumers. He paused, looking into the eyes of each board member. Yes, our profits may have decreased temporarily, but what we're gaining in terms of reputation, consumer loyalty, and social impact is priceless. And believe me, this will translate into sustainable growth in the long run. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, to everyone's surprise, it was Richard, Ethan's father, who spoke first. My son, he said, his voice choked with emotion. When you started with this idea, I confess I had my doubts. But today you've shown me the true meaning of leadership and innovation. I'm proud of you. One by one, the other board members expressed their support. There were still concerns and issues to be resolved, but the general feeling was one of optimism and confidence in the new direction of the company. Later, when everyone had left, Ethan and Lily were alone in the bakery. He hugged her tightly, feeling a mixture of relief and gratitude. We did it, he whispered. Lily smiled, caressing his face. No, my love, we're just getting started. And she was right. The path ahead would still be full of challenges, but together they were ready to face them. Digital Roots was flourishing, and with it a new vision of business that put people at the center of everything. As they closed the bakery that night, Ethan looked at Lily and realized he had found much more than a business partner. He had found his other half, someone who challenged him to be better, to see the world from a different perspective. The future was uncertain, but with Lily by his side and a clear vision of what they wanted to achieve, Ethan knew they were on the right path. The journey of transformation, both personal and professional, was far from over, but each step was an adventure they were eager to experience together. A year had passed since the launch of Digital Roots, and the transformation was palpable, not just at Reynolds Tech, but throughout the surrounding community. What had begun as an ambitious project had become a movement, inspiring changes in other companies and cities. On a sunny Saturday morning, Ethan woke up early, his heart full of anticipation. It was the day of the grand celebration of the project's anniversary, a festival that would bring together all the partners and supporters of Digital Roots. Beside him, Lily was still sleeping peacefully. Ethan smiled, remembering how she had worked tirelessly in recent days, coordinating preparations for the event. Silently, he got up and went to prepare breakfast. The aroma of fresh coffee and toast soon filled the apartment. Lily appeared in the kitchen, her hair disheveled and a sleepy smile on her face. Good morning, my love, Ethan greeted her, handing her a cup of coffee. "Ready for the big day?" Lily nodded, taking a sip. "I can hardly believe a year has passed already. It seems like yesterday we were scribbling ideas on that whiteboard in your office." As they had coffee, they mentally went over all the preparations. The festival would be held in a square in the heart of the city, transformed into an open-air market with booths from all Digital Roots partners. Upon arriving at the location, they were amazed at the transformation. The square was unrecognizable, decorated with colorful banners and filled with booths, where small producers proudly displayed their products. The air was full of tempting aromas, freshly baked bread, artisanal cheeses, specialty coffees. Ethan and Lily walked among the booths greeting the partners. Each familiar face had a success story to tell. "Ethan, Lily," called Mrs. Cleo from the cafe. "Come see, we managed to open our second store thanks to Digital Roots. Who would have thought my grandmother's recipe would go so far?" Further ahead, they found Mr. Joe, the artisanal cheesemaker, who a year ago was about to close the doors of his business. Now he smiled broadly, showing a line of award-winning cheeses he had developed. "You didn't just save my business," he said, emotional, "but an entire family tradition." As the day progressed, the square became increasingly crowded. Families strolled, sampling products and listening to the stories behind each booth. Journalists circulated, capturing images and interviewing participants. In the center of the square, a small stage had been set up. At noon, Ethan went up to give a speech. "Welcome, friends," he began, his voice laden with emotion. "A year ago, we embarked on a journey with Digital Roots. Many doubted, saying it was a utopia, that business and social impact couldn't coexist. Today, look around us. I see not just prosperous businesses, but a strengthened community." He paused, his eyes finding Lily's in the crowd. "None of this would be possible without each of you. Every producer who trusted in our vision, every consumer who chose to support local commerce, every team member who worked tirelessly, and, of course," he extended his hand, inviting Lily to join him on stage. "Without this incredible woman, who showed me that there's more to life and business than numbers on a spreadsheet." Lily came up, her cheeks flushed with the public praise. Together they continued the speech, alternating to tell the story of Digital Roots and share their vision for the future. "But this is just the beginning," Lily concluded. "We envision a future where each city has its own Digital Roots ecosystem, where technology serves to strengthen community bonds and preserve traditions, not to replace them." The applause was deafening. When they descended from the stage, they were surrounded by hugs, handshakes, and words of gratitude. Among the crowd, Ethan spotted his parents. Richard and Barbara approached, both with expressions of genuine pride. "Son," Richard said, his voice choked, "when you started with this idea, I confess I had my doubts. But today you've proven you were right. You not only kept Reynolds tech relevant, but transformed it into something truly meaningful." Barbara warmly embraced Lily. "And you, dear, thank you for bringing this new perspective to our family. You two make an incredible team." The rest of the day passed in a blur of activities. There were musical performances by local artists, cooking and craft workshops, and even the launch of a collaborative cookbook, gathering the stories and dishes of Digital Roots partners. As night fell, when the last booths were being dismantled, and the square slowly returned to normal, Ethan and Lily found a moment of quiet. They sat on a bench watching the sunset. "We did it, didn't we?" Lily said softly, leaning on Ethan's shoulder. He hugged her, planting a kiss on her forehead. "Yes, we did. And this is just the beginning." At that moment, looking at the square that hours before had been the stage for so much joy and community, Ethan had an epiphany. True success wasn't in bank numbers or corporate prestige. It was there in the connections forged, in the traditions preserved, in the lives transformed. "Lily," he said, turning to face her, "marry me." Her eyes widened in surprise. "What?" Ethan smiled, taking her hands in his. "You've changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. You've shown me a world full of possibilities, of real connections. I want To build not just businesses with you, but a life, a family. Tears of happiness sparkled in Lily's eyes. Yes, she whispered, 1,000 times yes. As they kissed, with the last ray of sun painting the sky golden, Ethan knew he had found much more than a business partner or a girlfriend. He had found his other half, someone with whom he wanted to share all the moments, challenges, and triumphs that life might offer. Digital Roots had planted the seeds of a transformation, not just in business, but in their personal lives. And now together, they were ready to reap the fruits of that love and shared vision, eager to see what other wonders the future held for them. The day dawned radiant, as if the sky itself were celebrating. It was the day of Ethan and Lily's wedding, an event that symbolized not just the union of two people, but the fusion of two worlds that not too long ago seemed incompatible. The ceremony would be held in the central square of the city, the same place where a year before they had celebrated the anniversary of Digital Roots. Now the space was transformed into an urban fairy tale, with wildflowers adorning every corner and delicate lights hanging between the trees. At Flower and Heart, temporarily converted into an improvised dressing room, Lily was getting ready, surrounded by her friends and mother. Her dress, an elegant and simple creation, had been made by a local seamstress, a partner of Digital Roots. "I never thought I'd see my daughter marrying a famous businessman," Lily's mother said, adjusting the veil. "But more than that, I never imagined seeing her so happy." Lily smiled, looking at herself in the mirror. "He's not just a famous businessman, Mom. He's someone who shares my dreams, who believes in the power of making a difference." On the other side of the square, in the Reynolds tech office, Ethan adjusted his tie, surrounded by his father and some close friends. "Son," Richard said, placing his hand on Ethan's shoulder, "I want you to know how proud I am of you, not just for the success of Digital Roots, but for having the courage to follow your heart and transform our company into something truly meaningful." Ethan hugged his father, feeling a wave of emotion. "Thank you, Dad, for trusting me, for giving my vision a chance." When the time came, the square was packed. It wasn't a conventional wedding with an exclusive guest list. Instead, it seemed that the entire community had gathered to celebrate. Small business partners of Digital Roots, Reynolds Tech employees, neighborhood residents. Everyone was there, united by the love story that had transformed their lives in one way or another. To the sound of a local orchestra, Lily walked down the improvised aisle. Ethan, upon seeing her, felt his heart race. She was radiant, carrying a bouquet of flowers grown by one of the project's partners. The ceremony was conducted by Mrs. Cleo, the cafe owner, who had obtained a special license for the occasion. Her words were simple but laden with meaning, speaking about union, community, and the transformative power of love. "Ethan and Lily," she said, her voice emotional, "you not only found each other, but showed us the path to a more compassionate and connected way of living and doing business. May your union continue to inspire and transform lives." When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the square. Ethan spoke about how Lily had opened his eyes to a world beyond numbers, teaching him the true meaning of success and fulfillment. Lily in turn thanked Ethan for believing in her vision and using his resources to amplify the impact they could have together. After the "I do," the square exploded in applause and cheers. Flower petals rained down on the couple, launched by children from local schools that had benefited from Digital Roots educational programs. The reception that followed was a true community celebration. Each dish served had a story, prepared by project partners. There was music from local artists, craft exhibitions, and even a collaborative mural where guests could leave messages and wishes for the couple. As the night progressed, Ethan and Lily found a moment of quiet, stepping away a bit from the party to observe the scene. "Look at this," Lily said softly, gesturing to the square full of life and joy. 2 years ago, you were a CEO focused only on profits, and I was a pastry chef struggling to keep my bakery open. Who could have imagined we'd get here?" Ethan hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "It's amazing, isn't it? How a small accident can completely change the course of our lives. And not just ours," Lily added. "Look how many lives we've touched, how many stories we've helped preserve and amplify. At that moment, Sarah approached carrying a tablet. "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a smile, "but I thought you might want to see this." She showed them a series of news articles. The digital roots model was being adopted in other cities, not just in the United States, but in other countries. Technology companies were drawing inspiration from Reynolds Tech's approach, seeking ways to integrate social impact into their business models. "You've started a movement," Sarah said, proud. "You're redefining what it means to be a successful company in the 21st century." Ethan and Lily exchanged an emotional look. What had begun as a casual encounter, a scratch on a luxury car, had transformed into something much bigger than they could have imagined. "You know what this means, don't you?" Ethan said, a gleam of excitement in his eyes. Lily smiled, already knowing where he was going. "That our work is just beginning." They returned to the party hand in hand, greeting friends, family, and partners. Each face they met told a story of transformation, of renewed hope. At midnight, under a starry sky and surrounded by all those they loved, Ethan and Lily cut the wedding cake, a collaborative masterpiece created by Lily and other pastry chefs who were partners of Digital Roots. As they served the slices, Ethan took the microphone for a final speech. "Friends, family, partners," he began, "today we celebrate not just our union, but the union of an entire community. Each of you is part of this story, and together we'll continue to write even more incredible chapters." Lily took the microphone, completing. "Digital Roots has shown that it's possible to unite technology and tradition, progress and preservation. But more than that, it has shown the transformative power of love, whether for a person, for a community, or for a dream." The party continued into the night, a celebration not just of a wedding, but of a shared vision, of a future where business, community, and love walked hand in hand. When the last guests had left and the square slowly returned to silence, Ethan and Lily remained, dancing slowly under the soft lights. "Where do we go from here?" Lily asked, looking into the eyes of her now husband. Ethan smiled, kissing her softly. "Wherever love and our vision take us, the world is full of stories waiting to be told, of communities waiting to be strengthened. And together, my love, there's no limit to what we can achieve." As night gave way to a new dawn, Ethan and Lily knew they were on the threshold of a new chapter, not just in their personal lives, but in the story of how business could be conducted, how communities could be strengthened, and how love could be the catalyst for truly meaningful changes. The rising sun painted the sky in golden and pink hues, promising a new day full of possibilities. And for Ethan and Lily, each new day was an opportunity to continue their journey, to spread more love, more connection, and more hope throughout the world. The days after that unusual encounter at the bakery passed like a blur for Ethan Reynolds. Between one strategic meeting and another, his mind, which previously operated like a precise mechanism, now found itself constantly invaded by thoughts of Lily Morgan. It was as if that brief moment when he had exchanged dollar signs and contracts for an unpretentious conversation had opened a crack for something he had long forgotten: simplicity. The following Friday, after ending an international call, Ethan decided to do something impulsive. He put on a casual jacket, a rarity in his wardrobe, and drove back to Flower and Heart Bakery. The bell on the door tingled familiarly, and there she was, focused, with a trace of flour on her face, decorating a cake. "You again?" Lily joked upon seeing him, but her grey eyes sparkled with a poorly disguised curiosity. "I have a proposal," Ethan began, direct as he was accustomed to doing in business, "but not for your bicycle, nor to pay for the car repair." She looked at him, raising an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Ethan approached the counter. "My company will hold a charity event for young entrepreneurs from underserved communities. I want Flower and Heart to handle the pastries." Lily blinked, surprised. "You want my small bakery to cater a millionaire event?" He gave a slight smile. "Exactly, and with your name at the top of the menu." She crossed her arms, thoughtful. "Why, Ethan? I don't believe you don't have a list of gourmet suppliers ready to attend." He hesitated for a moment before answering. "Because I think the world needs less gourmetization, and more authenticity. And you know how to do that like no one else. She smiled, a small but genuine smile. All right, let's make your event a bit sweeter, but with one condition. He raised his eyebrows. I want complete freedom with the menu. No fancy suggestions. Ethan let out a genuine laugh. Deal. But inside he knew this partnership would be just the beginning. The event hall in Manhattan's financial district was packed. CEOs, investors, young entrepreneurs, and influencers occupied the luxuriously decorated tables. Ethan, in an impeccable suit, walked among the guests, but kept a watchful eye on the side entrance, where a team carefully unloaded boxes marked with the flower and heart logo. Shortly after, Lily appeared alongside the employees, efficiently directing every detail of the dessert table setup. She wore a simple dress, hair tied in a bun, and seemed out of place in that environment laden with formalities, but absolutely confident in what she was doing. Ethan approached as she organized the pastries. Is it the way you imagined? He asked. She cast a quick glance around. It's more pompous than I imagined, but well, let's put a little soul into it. When the table was ready, a line formed almost instantly. The aroma of spiced honey cake and crunchy brigadeiros, Lily's exclusive recipes, dominated the space, eclipsing even the main dishes. Observing from a distance, Ethan noticed something curious. Executives who normally discussed figures were smiling as they tasted the pastries. Young entrepreneurs, intimidated by the environment, relaxed near the flower and heart table. It was as if those small pieces of simplicity were breaking invisible barriers. During his speech, Ethan couldn't help but include a special mention. I want to thank the team from Flower and Heart Bakery and Chef Lily Morgan. Today they reminded us that great businesses begin with authenticity and a little sugar. Lily, listening from the corner of the room, couldn't contain a shy smile. But more than pride, she felt a strange growing anxiety. Ethan Reynolds was a man from another world, but for some reason his presence was beginning to mess up everything she thought she knew about herself. The repercussion of the charity event was immediate. The next day, business newspapers carried headlines highlighting not just the millionaire donations, but also the unexpected gesture of Reynolds Tech's CEO in highlighting a small local bakery. Lily, back to the routine at Flower and Heart, tried to ignore the messages on the bakery's Instagram. New orders, interview invites, and even partnership proposals that emerged as a consequence of the event. But it was impossible to forget one detail. Ethan Reynolds had put the spotlight on her without asking for anything in return. On Tuesday, he appeared again without warning, casually leaning against the counter. Did you see the newspapers? He asked, a contained smile at the corner of his lips. I did, she replied, drying her hands on a cloth. And I confess I'm torn. I don't know whether to thank you or blame you for this avalanche. Ethan laughed, but there was a hint of something more serious in his eyes. It was sincere. I didn't do it for marketing. She sighed, leaning on the counter. I believe you. But you understand, don't you? This here, the bakery, is all I have. I don't want to become a passing fad just because you decided to leave your perfect world and play in mine. He fell silent for a moment, studying her face. Is that what you think I'm doing, playing? Lily looked away. I don't know, Ethan. I just know that you can leave any time. I can't. Silence hung between them, dense, full of things unsaid. Ethan seemed about to respond, but as if changing his mind at the last second, he just nodded and said goodbye with a discreet wave. Lily stood watching the door, feeling the weight of that conversation. It wasn't fear of him. It was fear of what she herself was beginning to feel.